Good afternoon, everyone. Our next session, an exciting panel discussion titled Leading the Charge, Home EV Charging and Connecting to Solar Power, will be moderated by Justin Phil. Justin Phil is the Senior Engineer, Green Building and Energy Code with the City of Edmonton Safety Codes, Permits and Inspections Group. He works with both internal and external stakeholders to improve their energy code knowledge. Outside of the Energy Code, he is part of a number of City of Edmonton initiatives to reduce carbon emissions and build industry capacity to reach the goal of emissions-neutral buildings. Justin and speakers, the stage is yours.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Welcome to the Leading the Charge panel. In this session, we'll be learning about charging your EV at home and exploring the exciting opportunity of using solar energy to power your EV. As mentioned, I'm Justin Phil. I'm the Senior Engineer, Green Building and Energy Code at the City of Edmonton. I have the pleasure of moderating this panel, which includes Heather McKenzie of Solar Alberta and Shane Fraser from EPCOR. So I'd like to start with the land acknowledgement. The City of Edmonton acknowledges the traditional land on which we reside is in Treaty 6 territory. We would like to thank the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, such as Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and Blackfoot peoples. We also acknowledge this as the Métis homeland and the home of one of the largest communities of Inuits south of the 60th parallel. It is a welcoming place for all people who come from around the world to share Edmonton as a home. Together, we call upon all of our collective, honored traditions and spirits to work in building a great city for today and for future generations. So our agenda today is a pretty short one. For the next 45 minutes, we'll have a couple short presentations from myself and the two from Shane and Heather on the panel as well, and then we'll open the floor to questions from all of you. So since I work in the Safety Codes, Permits and Inspections group, I just wanted to quickly talk about our role in how EVs and solar panels get installed on your home. So the City of Edmonton Safety Codes, Permits and Inspections group is a team made up of safety code officers and other subject matter experts who help verify that your construction meets applicable codes to keep you safe. So the codes that we look at are the building code, the fire code, plumbing code, energy code, and the electrical code. Things you need a permit for, basically anything safety related. If it's a cosmetic kind of change to your home, such as replacing flooring or shingles or installing kitchen cabinets, you don't need a permit for it. But when you start doing more extensive renovations or things that could impact the safety of the occupants, such as finishing a basement or adding an EV charger or solar panels or changing the size of a window or a door, these are renovations where you need a permit to make sure that you're meeting all codes and that you and any future occupants are safe. To get a permit, you can visit edmonton.ca/permits. You can apply online and do everything online, or if you prefer, you can also download and email an application form for whatever permit you require. So after you do that, you'd fill out the permit application, which describes the work that you're doing just very briefly, and attach any associated documents with it. That then gets assigned to a safety code officer who reviews your application, provides any feedback required, and will issue a permit if everything looks good. The important thing is, don't start work without a permit. It can get expensive if you need to go back and change something, and it's also unsafe if you start doing something that doesn't meet code. So following that, you can complete the work, whether you're doing it yourself within your own home or you hire a contractor to help you out for the more challenging tasks. Finally, you book an inspection online through the self-serve portal or by calling 311. They'll come out, inspect your work, and then once you correct any deficiencies, you're done. They give you a sticker and everything's all good. Just a couple of permit and inspection tips. Apply for your permits early. There's 120 of us in the group, but it can take several weeks before a safety code officer has a chance to review your application, depending on how complex it is. Just for reference, for some numbers, in 2021, we issued over 7,500 building permits and home improvement permits, such as basement renovations, over 18,000 electrical permits, 3,500 HVAC permits, and 15,000 plumbing and gas permits. So we're a pretty busy group, but we're here to help. One other tip, keep an eye on your email through the permit and plans review process. If we need to ask for more information for you, the quicker you get back to us, the quicker we can get back to you, and the quicker you can get your work done. If you have any questions, I'm at the Safety Codes booth, which is shared with the Change for Climate group up front. Any questions, come help me, or come ask me. I'll help you out, and I'll have a colleague here tomorrow helping as well. So our first presentation will be from Shane Fraser from EPCOR. Shane works as part of a team to determine how to best adapt the electrical distribution system in Edmonton to support a future where there is a greater reliance on electricity and the decarbonization of energy. In his previous role as manager, customer connections, Shane and his team worked to ensure timely energizations of new connections and supported the interconnection of distributed energy resources into the grid, such as solar systems and public EV charging stations. Shane is also a member of EPCOR's Grid Modernization Committee, the City of Edmonton Emissions Neutral Buildings Advisory Group, and Alberta Innovates Smart Grid Consortium, as well as other industry advisory groups. So with that, I'll let Shane come up and take it away.
All right, thank you for the introduction there, Justin, and thank you for allowing EPCOR to be part of this wonderful event that the city's put on. Again, I'm Shane Fraser, Manager of Grid Transformation at EPCOR, and today I'm going to quickly talk about EV adoption in Edmonton and in Alberta, and some of the basic information that EV buyers looking at buying an EV should be aware of before they go make that purchase. This will all help prime the discussion and our Q&A later on after Heather's presentation. So without further ado, let's look at some of the EV adoption numbers we currently see in Alberta. So electric vehicle adoption has been rising substantially in Alberta over the last couple of years. Even during the pandemic, this accelerated growth has continued. And while we're waiting on the 2022 numbers from the province of Alberta regarding EV adoption, by all accounts, the adoption is continuing to grow substantially. Adoption today appears to be limited by supply, with long waiting lists and many models selling out very quickly. There seems to be much interest in it. These values you see on the screen right now are from the City of Edmonton. The potential for EV growth is substantial. Most vehicles on the road today are light-duty vehicles. These are your cars, SUVs, and trucks, like the Ford F-150. There are many varying offerings from vehicle manufacturers in this space, and many more are coming out each year. 93% of the vehicles on the road are currently within this light-duty vehicle category, with 81% of them being privately owned and 12% of them being in the fleets. Each year in Edmonton, 42,000 new vehicles join the road, many of these replacing other vehicles that are on the road today. With the federal government mandating 100% of new vehicle sales in 2035 being zero emission, and most likely EVs, we will expect to see approximately 50% of the vehicles on the road in 2035 being EVs, and expect to be 100% EV by the mid-2040s. So, if you're one of those people who might be looking at buying a new vehicle and being one of the 42,000 new vehicles on the road in the next year, you're going to want to know some basic information. So I have some tips that you might want to know before you buy your first EV. These are the three takeaways that I'd like to leave you with today. The first one being is everyone's needs are different. Often we hear people say, this was my experience with an EV, but your charging needs are going to be really based on the distance you travel each day and the size of your EV battery. This is going to dictate how often you need to charge, and most EV owners charge at home. So when you get your EV, you're going to want to be able to come home and plug it in on day one so you can enjoy it on day two. You're going to want to get a qualified electrician to help you determine your home's capacity and what upgrades are required to be able to do that. First question they need to ask is the size of the service coming into your home. Most homes built today have 100 amp services, and this may be sufficient for your needs depending on how you use power in your home. This is the second thing they're going to look at. They're going to look at the size of if you have a dryer or stove, air conditioner, hot tub, and they're going to do a calculation that's mandated by the Canadian Electrical Code. And that's going to tell them if you need to have a service upgrade or potentially look at doing an electric vehicle energy management service. In many cases, no change may be required. If you just have a stove and dryer, your 100 amp service may be sufficient for you to charge your EV with a level 2 charger. So you keep hearing me say level 1, level 2, different levels of chargers. In industry, we have 3 levels of chargers. Level 1 is your typical 120 volt outlet, like you would plug in your TV or your computer into or to charge your cell phone. Level 2 is more in line with your stove or dryer. These are 240 volt outlets, and this is where most EV owners, the level at which they charge in their homes. There's also level 3. There's an example of a level 3 charger at the back side of the Encore booth in front of me here. These are equivalent to a gas station. Sometimes they're referred to as superchargers, which is a brand name by Tesla. But these provide very high-speed charging and require very specialized equipment from the utility and on the charging infrastructure. As you can see, the higher the level of charging, the faster it charges. So, you're one of those people who've decided to get a level 2 charger, so you have a broad option of charging your EV when you get it home. Most important thing is you're going to get that electrician. Give them a call. The Electrical Contractors Association of Alberta, which has a website, ecaa.ab.ca, has a list of qualified electricians that can help you out with this. They're going to do most of the work for you and help you figure out what the best solution is for you. Then they're going to work with EPCOR in the city of Edmonton on permitting with Justin's group to get you a safe installation in your home, which will then allow you to plug in your EV. And I'm told questions are going to be later, but thank you so much for having me, and I will pass it along.
Perfect. Thanks, Shane. So our next presentation is from Heather McKenzie. Heather is the Executive Director of Solar Alberta, where she and her team are working hard to accelerate Alberta's transition to a just and sustainable energy future. They do so through advocacy, education, and serving as an industry and community hub for solar energy. Heather is a seasoned leader, community organizer, and green business advocate. Prior to becoming the Executive Director of Solar Alberta, she worked as a government relations professional, ran her own business, and served as an elected trustee on the Edmonton Public School Board. She is in the midst of completing a master's in public administration and has a master's in international development, and has undergraduate degrees in both sociology and history. She believes that investing in solar is a very concrete way that everyday Albertans can take meaningful action on climate change. So with that, I'll invite Heather to come up and present. Thanks.
Well, hello. Thank you very much for the introduction. As was mentioned, my name is Heather McKenzie, and I'm the Executive Director of Solar Alberta. So we're actually hosting a booth here this weekend. I've got some staff, along with our partner Relay Education, over near the bus at the front. And I just want to encourage you all to go and say hello and pick up a business card so that you can reach out to us at a later date. I'm going to pretend I know which button to push next, but I don't. The big green, the big green button. How logical. All right, great. You can tell I haven't actually been out of the house in like 3 years, so just bear with me here. This is my first time seeing real people in a while. So to begin, I'm really pleased to share that this is Solar Alberta's 31st year of operation. I think a lot of people didn't realize that solar had been popular for so long, but it actually has. We actually had a club even before we became a not-for-profit 31 years ago. So we are actually a not-for-profit society that's dedicated to accelerating Alberta's energy transition in a just and sustainable way. We do so, of course, as Justin was saying, by advocating, educating, and serving as an industry and community hub for solar energy. Our membership is made up of over 350 individuals and businesses. So solar enthusiasts, EV enthusiasts, but also the businesses that get folks the services they need. We provide a number of services, including managing a solar directory and solar map through our website. In this way, we act as a bridge for installers, suppliers, and other solar-related businesses, like those installing EV chargers, to connect with their customers and clients. You can see a screenshot of the directory here on this slide. On the website, you can also submit a request for proposals or quotes, and those requests can include solar installation quotes, those can include EV charger quotes, those can be a variety of quotes. Whatever you're looking for, our members will be happy to provide quotes for you. You can also learn about various financing options that are available to help make the transition to solar. In addition to our website services, we run a number of educational programs, such as our free solar webinar series on 1 or 2 Thursdays a month over the lunch hour. We actually have one coming up this Thursday about how to site your solar, and we're doing that with the City of Calgary. We also have new multilingual Solar 101 workshops for anyone who's trying to convince a family member of solar and that family member would like to learn in a different language. You're welcome to refer them to some of our multilingual workshops. This fall and winter, we're hosting a number of online courses for solar industry professionals or those transitioning into the sector. Classes are on Tuesday and Thursday evenings, and the cost is only between $175 to $250 per course. There's also a 10% discount for members. The first class is called The Economics of Grid-Tied Solar PV, and it's going to be starting in October. If you're unable to attend live classes, we also have a paper download courses and workshops on our website. Lastly, we host an annual online conference and trade show called the Solar Show. So I just want to have you all save the dates of February 6th to 10th. We had about 600 people at our solar show last year, and we anticipate even more this year. Hope you can all join us online for that. Just want to take a quick opportunity to encourage you to become Solar Alberta members. We're constantly evolving our member service offerings, some of which you can see listed here on the screen. Individual membership is only $35, and you can just purchase straight through solaralberta.ca. We also have volunteer opportunities, and volunteers are eligible for free membership with Solar Alberta, as well as $100 off of courses after committing 15 hours. And last but not least, I just want to take an opportunity to encourage you to join us at NATE on October 13th. We are working with the Smart, Sustainable, Resilient Infrastructure Association to co-host a green building trade show and networking event. And so if you are interested in a trade show booth, those are only $200. And of course, there is a discount for members of 10%. The event itself is going to be free though, so stay tuned to social media and our newsletters to learn about these events. And with that, I'm really looking forward to our chat and discussing why you should pair solar with your EV. I was actually thinking that we should have had more wine pairing jokes in this presentation, because really I'm encouraging you to pair the two. So looking forward to chatting more.
Thanks, Heather. Yes, EVs and solar, the new wine and cheese. So with that concludes the presentation. So we'll get into the question portion of the session. We got just under a half hour to take any questions that you may have. Sure, let's start. You got a microphone right there.
Here we go. Can you hear me? Oh, perfect. Yeah. This one's for Shane. It's something we've talked about before. So if you're drawing a 240 circuit into your garage, what can you do so that let's say you can use it for a wood shop or an arc welder? What are your options so you can maximize the use of that circuit instead of just for a charger?
That's a good question. Electricity is electricity, right? So it doesn't matter whether it's powering your EV or powering your air compressor or your welder, as long as you have enough voltage, and most homes have 240 volts in them and enough amperage. One thing, first of all, talk to an electrician, right? And they're going to identify your use cases. But if you install a plug instead of a hardwired EV charger, you'll be able to unplug your EV charger and then use that plug for other devices. EV chargers have a much longer continuous use pattern to them, so they become the limiting factor when designing the circuits in your home. If you, instead of going with a hardwired install one, buy an EV charger that actually plugs into a wall, and it'll be a socket much like your dryer or your range socket. I hope that helps.
Perfect. Thank you. Got a question over on this side.
Yeah, maybe a question for all three participants. So Shane, you had this nice graph with the uptake of EV vehicles, I think, in Alberta, and there's probably a similar graph to uptake of solar in Alberta. And I guess I wonder what are the challenges of this uptake? Like, what are the next steps? What are the opportunities? And what are some of the challenges as well? In both, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I may just start by talking about the uptick in solar first off, because I didn't give you a beautiful graph like Shane. So I do follow these numbers monthly, and typically we go up by about 100 installations a month in Alberta. But interestingly enough, over the summer, we shot up from 8,300 installations on homes and businesses to over 9,300 now. So we actually went from going up about 100 a month to about 900 a month. And I think a big change was the Canada Greener Homes loan that actually has enabled zero interest financing for solar. And that was only took effect this past summer. So I think the chart for solar was going along pretty much like the EV chart, and now it's just off the charts. So it's going to be an interesting adaptation. Happy to speak about challenges, but maybe you want to start with that, Shane?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm preparing another presentation I'm giving in 2 weeks down in the States that look exactly at this, EV uptake and solar uptake. And I created a graph for that, and it's amazing how those two charts actually mirror each other. Solar uptake was a little bit faster in about 2017, 2018, but EVs have shot up substantially, especially at the end of the pandemic here. As far as the challenge goes for the grid to handle it, it's actually not that bad. When you think about it, when we built the power grid in the early 1900s, the average service going to a home was only about 30 amps. You had lights. There wasn't a lot of other usages for electricity. As we approached the 1930s and during the Depression, there were a lot of new appliances that came on, like curling irons and toasters and other small appliances. And we saw a shift where homes went from 30 amp services to 60 amp services. And that we continued along with those 60 amp services for some time until about the 1960s, when people started getting electric ranges, getting electric dryers, air conditioning in their homes, and we saw a shift to 100 amp services happen then. So now we're seeing another big shift with the introduction of electric vehicles, which put more of a strain on the home's power grid. And we luckily live in a world today which is much more digital and much more technological, and we can use devices like energy management systems, which can automatically detect and switch power in the home system. And that's probably one of the best devices that has come out, in my opinion, to handle the influx of EVs. But we'll also likely see a shift in the future to 200 amp services in residential homes. We've been dealing, as a society, with a growing grid, with growing needs for our homes, for our industry, with a growing population for over a century. This is nothing new. It's just the next version of what we've done many, many times before.
Do you want to add, Justin, before I jump in?
And it's great to have the industry's support of groups such as Heather's at Solar Alberta and help of EPCOR from a city perspective, so we can help to identify the needs and where the city can contribute to making these obstacles become opportunities instead as well too. So we know solar is an important part of the city's goals of being an emissions neutral city by 2050, and it's really great to have all this expertise and support to help achieve that goal.
Yeah, so I wanted to just add to what you were saying, because of course Solar Alberta is fully supportive of getting 200 amp services for all new homes because of our EV friends and the fact that we want EVs on solar, and we want to all be working together. We'd like to see the homes electrified for heating as well, just so that we can achieve our climate objectives. But I will say that one of the ways to deal with the challenges on the system is more distributed energy. So of course, anyone who is producing their own energy at home is actually reducing reducing demand on the grid. So distributed energy like solar is a phenomenal way to reduce demand on the grid as a whole. It reduces the infrastructure needs when folks are making their own energy at home. And so we just really want to encourage everybody who has an electric vehicle to adopt solar as well, so that we actually don't have as much of a challenge in terms of meeting our needs on the grid. Is a beautiful synergy there.
And to add to that, you're absolutely right, Heather. EVs are additional load, and the whole power grid's built around this idea of supplying enough energy for the load. But in the case of solar, it's actually anti-load because it's actually generation. So it actually takes, there's plenty of capacity to actually supply, power connections for solar panels in our community. And really, on a 100 amp service, which is what most homes have now, that actually can supply up to 19 kilowatts of generative power back into the grid. So there's no limitation on the service size, really, for the vast majority of consumer PV systems.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the beneficial role that solar can play at the local level. I will say when we're looking at solar farms and larger infrastructure like that, we do have some transmission line issues, right? And so certainly when we get to the transmission line piece, there are some large installations that can't go ahead in rural Alberta because they're not well enough supported by transmission lines. So we do need to boost the transmission line infrastructure in parts of the province to make sure that we can accommodate some of these large solar farms that are coming online. So we do have challenges to overcome, but I would say when it comes to distribution, solar is a net contributor to overcoming those challenges.
Perfect. Thank you. We got another question. Go ahead.
For a typical home that has 100 amp service into the house, underground electrical service coming to the house, what would an average or typical cost be for the homeowner to upgrade to a 200 amp service into the house?
That's a good question. I get asked a lot, and I would say there is no typical case because the cost is largely driven by what is between your power meter and the transformer on your street that's providing you the power. If it's on your front lawn, it can actually be relatively low cost. You're talking about $6,000 probably to get that trenched in, just across the green space of your lawn and connected. If you're talking down across the couple streets, across all your neighbors' properties, where we're digging up holes, replacing grass, pulling out sidewalk, and pushing cables under roads, it can get up into the tens of thousands of dollars. The average that we see is around $18,000, and that's why EPCOR is so encouraging of people looking at the EV energy management systems. It's a box that goes between the EV charger and your home electrical panel that automatically switches. Usually it's connected to another high-load device in your home, like your dryer or your stove. I like the stove because largely, when you want to charge your EV, your stove's probably not going to be on because it's in the middle of the night. A lot of people charge overnight. And frankly, you shouldn't be cooking with your stove in the middle of the night when you're sleeping. So you're probably not using that circuit anyways. It's also generally better for the power grid if people charge during the night because there's a lot of excess capacity because we don't have industry and people at work using the power grid. So I would encourage you to speak to an electrical installer. There's a couple around here today, like Kubi and Skyfire and others, and the people on your list, and they'd be able to talk about their service offerings. EPCOR also has a document on their website called the Customer Connection Guide, and there's a section in there that talks about these energy management systems and how it can provide you with the needs without having a costly service upgrade. Now, I want to take also this opportunity to say that if you have an aerial system, one of the power lines on the power poles, largely those are almost near free to get those services upgraded. So if you live in an older community where you have that sort of service, it's probably actually more economical to get a 200 amp service upgrade from EPCOR.
Yeah, and it's interesting. One thing I learned when becoming an EV owner and a solar owner is that not all of us actually need 200. So we actually were good to go with 100. We got all of our approvals with 100. So that was interesting. Because I had always assumed you had to have 200, but it turns out not everybody. There are many people who do, and most of my neighbors did have to upgrade to accommodate the same level of service, but that was largely because they had garage suites or they had basement suites, whereas we were in a row home with no basement and no garage suite. heat, then we didn't have to get the upgrades. So it's interesting to see how, depending on the person's home and lifestyle, it can really change your costs. We didn't even have to incur the cost of a charger because we actually only drive on the weekends. And so because we only drive on the weekends, it doesn't matter to my family if we charge all week long. I could care less as long as I get 400 kilometers on my car for the weekend and I can road trip to my in-laws. I'm good to go because we're all working and schooling from around our home. And so it's interesting to see how, depending on your lifestyle, it can impact both your amperage needs but also your home charging needs.
Yeah, many people get by with just the level 1 plugging into the wall charger. When it comes to the level 2, one thing that we found is that if you have a 100 amp service and you have an electric dryer and electric range, but you don't have anything else like a hot tub or air conditioning, you'll probably actually have enough space on your electrical panel to install a level 2 charger without any other additional infrastructure changes to your home, other than running the wire to where you want the charger. Many people get by without having to do any upgrades, even if they want a level 2. But to Heather's point, it really does come down to your personal use case and how much you plan on using the vehicle. The other thing you consider is that many people live in multifamily homes, and they might not be able to have access to a charger. There is a charging network throughout the city of level 2 chargers and level 3 chargers, which you can use like fuel stations to charge your EV, and then just park it at your vehicle and park it at your home and use it through the week. I have a friend that does this. He lives in a 4-level typical multifamily building, and he charges at a supercharger once a week, and then he uses a gas station. So there are other different options like that as well. You might even not need a charger in your home.
Yeah, I was going to say, Shane, my husband's become a really big fan of the Kinsman playground because there's free charging at Kinsman. And so, whenever the kids are like, hey, can we go swimming? He's like, yes, we're going. And we actually probably pay less for swimming than we do to charge our car. So some folks can get real creative if they're motivated to save.
Perfect, thanks. And just a plug, if you want any more information, I think there's links to that guide from EPCOR on the safety codes, permits and inspections handout I have up front. So if you want a reference to those links or anything, feel free to grab one on the way out as well too. We had another question, please go ahead.
Yeah, on one of the slides saying that level 1, for charging is only like summer use. So is there any concern, like I don't have a heated garage. So does it mean that in the winter time I shouldn't plug it in, or what's the concern? Is it doable?
So that's my slide. That's my slide that says that. And it's not a rule. It's just a suggestion, right? And again, when you drive an EV in the winter, unlike a gas vehicle, which has a lot of excess latent heat from the engine running, which is then pumped into your vehicle to warm it up, an EV has to use some of the battery itself to heat up the air and keep your vehicle warm. And so you're going to use more energy when you drive your vehicle in the winter because you need to heat it. And so that's where level 1 charging you might run into some challenges depending on your personal use case. Not to say that it won't work. Everybody's needs are different. One thing I'd encourage you to do is the EPCOR distribution and transmission booth is at the very end of the hall here, and we have an EV pamphlet that actually goes through and shows you a recommended calculation you can do to determine your battery size and need, and it takes into account winter heating needs in that calculation. And if you want, I'll be happy to talk to you afterwards on the side of the stage, and I can help you out with some guidance on that.
Thanks, Shane. All right, got another one. Please go ahead.
What's the future plan for vehicle to grid in Alberta?
Sorry, could you repeat that one more time?
What's the future plans for vehicle to grid, like vehicle with battery capacity going to the grid?
Yeah, I like that question. I've been asking the GOA that as well. I wish we could have some of the ISO folks and everyone here on stage with us to answer that. I haven't heard of the plan for vehicle to grid, and I don't know if there is one, but I'll certainly be happy to lobby for that if anyone wants to work on that together. I think it's the way of the future. I did hear the Ford Lightning was joking that they could charge Teslas that were stranded on the side of the highway. But it, all that joking aside, it did get me thinking about the capacity for these vehicles as storage devices and the importance of using them as storage devices, especially to enhance reliability in rural Alberta and make sure folks have backup energy sources. So I like your question, but I don't have an answer for it. And I'm not sure if the GOA does have one yet.
And to be clear, GOA is Government of Alberta. From a utility perspective, a vehicle to grid is the same as a Tesla Powerwall or any other battery that exports to the power grid. Our interest is knowing about it and knowing what its power capacity is, so we can account for it coming back into the power grid itself. We would treat it just like we would treat solar panels. So from a technological point of view, there's nothing really preventing it. I don't think there's been a big market for it. I'm not sure if that'll change over time. That'll, I guess, be up to gentlemen like you and other consumers, right? But at the end of the day, technologically speaking, there's nothing necessarily preventing it from happening. It's just a matter of industry and the retail world supporting it.
All right, thank you. All right, please go ahead.
Hi. If I wanted to install solar panels on the garage to charge my EV, do you have any guidelines on how much solar panel capacity I have to have for a level 1 or a level 2 charger?
Well, I could give you just a general idea. It's not really based on the charger. It's more just based on the quantity of overall electricity that your car would be using. So, for example, we have a 7 kilowatt array on our home to charge our regular household needs. And we recently bought an EV, so we are upgrading. And we're going to be putting on 4 more panels, and I think it equaled about 3 kilowatts more to cover off for our electric vehicle. And so it didn't really have anything to do with the charger. It had everything to do with how much the car is expected to use based on our usage patterns. And really all of the solar installers, if they're registered through Solar Alberta, will likely be able to tell you exactly how much you'll need based on your usage patterns. And they'll need to kind of look at how much you use your car and what type of car and all that jazz. So there'll be some factors that they'll let you know. The other thing you'll have to think about for a garage is not all garages are built alike. And unfortunately, what we discovered is that our garage is not solar ready, and it cannot support the weight of solar panels. So that was a big disappointment to us, because now we're squeezing all the extra panels onto our little roof. And so you might have a similar challenge with a roof on a garage that's not solar ready. And one of the things we're encouraging the city to consider right now is requiring new homes to be solar ready, to have garages that are solar ready, so that homeowners don't have to upgrade down the road and install a stronger roof on their garage to accommodate solar for their electric vehicle. But yeah, ballpark figure, you're looking at about maybe 4 panels, 4 or 5 for your electric vehicle to top up on your larger installation.
Okay, and a follow-up question: Are you using tying back into the grid with your solar panels, or are you exclusive for the?
Yeah, so an interesting fact about solar in Alberta is almost all solar in Alberta is grid tied. It's very rare that it wouldn't be grid tied. It's really strongly recommended, in many cases required, for all solar arrays to be grid tied. So you will find that in order to get permitting and whatnot, they'll want the assurance that you have the backup of the grid whenever you're installing solar. Essentially, the way the grid works in Alberta is to alleviate the need for you to have individual batteries in each of your homes. You're going to be using the grid as your backup battery. So it just makes it safer for everyone, so nobody's left in the dark and nobody's left in the cold, especially during our winters.
Okay, and then one last question. What does it cost then to tie that back into the grid? Do we have to pay for the equipment to tie back to the grid?
So what does it cost? The cost is actually for the equipment installed in your home, right? And like I said earlier, 100 amp service can pretty much handle all the solar you're going to stick on your roof. From a utility perspective, there's probably no upgrades required. And if upgrades were required, let's say we had to replace the transformers on the street or upgrade some of our cables in the distribution to support the solar, EPCOR would take care of those costs, and you'd never see that on your system. So.
Yeah, for the grid
for the
tie,
grid
like
tie.
for the bidirectional meter for a solar, it's just standard. It's not usually an additional cost.
99% of the homes in Edmonton already have a bidirectional meter and are ready to receive solar on their roofs.
Yeah, because they, like we were saying earlier, they kind of want you to generate your own energy. Ideally, it reduces the pressure on the grids. So there are still costs you have to pay in your monthly utility bills. For example, there are fixed transmission and distribution costs that you'll never get away from, even if you reduce your consumption. And we have a video on our website, or you can check in with me later at it's a Solar 101 video, and it'll walk you through what a solar installation will do to your utility bills every month. And so it'll kind of say, you start out here, and then these aspects of your bill will drop according to your production, and these ones won't. And so you can get a sense for that. And also, actually, each one of the solar installers can also walk you through that. If anyone tries to tell you that you're going to pay no electricity bill ever again, they're lying, and you should probably get a Solar Alberta member to do your array, because you do still have some fixed costs you're going to have to pay for, absolutely.
Generally, you're going to overproduce in the summer, and you'll actually get a credit on your bill. In my case, I call it my financial battery. I just see a net positive balance on my bill. And then come winter, when I don't produce enough energy for my monthly needs, I start drawing down from that credit. And I just kind of end up with this yo-yo effect on my bill throughout the year.
Justin, I wonder if we could talk for a minute about why it's important to pair solar with electric vehicles. Would you be open to us commenting on that now?
Absolutely. Did you want to kick us off?
I really would, because it's my favorite question that nobody's yet asked, and you may all already know the answer. And so I guess, does anyone know why it's important from a climate change perspective? Like, why do you want to pair solar with your EVs? What is the value of that? Why not just pull off the regular old grid? Why would you want to produce it? Other than, all the financials aside, if one of our goals is to sort of mitigate climate change, why would you want to pair the two? I see a hand up over there. Aaron, do you mind?
Thanks. So my assumption here would be because the generation is using fossil fuels. So if we're pulling off the grid and the power is being produced by burning fossil fuels, then are we actually still doing something good for the environment? And then it becomes a question of what's the efficiency of those plants compared to the efficiency of an internal combustion engine in the vehicles.
Exactly. And you're quite right. So, ultimately, if you were pulling power off the grid in BC, where it's almost all renewable energy already, then from an environmental perspective, it wouldn't matter whether you're pulling power off the grid in BC or from your home. Either way, you're pulling renewable energy. In Alberta, the majority of the grid is still being charged by natural gas. And of course, coal is going to be phased out completely next year, which is great. And so our grid is getting a lot cleaner. But you're quite right. If you're pulling power for your EV off the general grid, you are largely pulling natural gas. Now, that is still better for the environment than a regular old vehicle. So you were right to talk about that. So at the end of the day, the EV is still the more environmentally friendly purchase. But if you really care about the environment, then you definitely want to pair your EV with a solar array on your home until Alberta has successfully phased out natural gas on the electricity grid. Because otherwise, you are essentially charging your car with fossil fuels still. So I really appreciate you sharing that, and I appreciate everybody giving me a minute, to get up on my high horse. But we often talk a lot about dollars and cents, and we sometimes forget to talk about the reason for all of this in the first place, which is that, ideally we're moving towards a net zero future, right? So this is one step you can take on the road to net zero, is just having your own solar to make sure that every time you're charging your electric vehicle at home, you're using renewable energy. So thanks so much, and thanks, Justin, for letting me, go off on my high horse.
It's a good question, and you covered mine of how does it compare to a typical gas vehicle as well too. It's good to know that either way we're pushing in the right direction. Did you have anything to add, Shane?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you do want to know how an EV, even on the grid today, compares to a gas vehicle, our friends at the Electric Vehicle Association of Alberta, whose tent's back there near the entrance, have a wonderful tool on their website where you can go on and choose an EV and compare it to a gas vehicle. And it actually draws data directly from the ASO, the group in Alberta that is in charge of generation, live in the minute to see how the electric grid, the power that comes from the electric grid, powers that EV and the total carbon impact from that EV as a result compared to a large number of gas vehicles. I highly recommend that you talk to the EVAA if you're interested in that, or check out their website.
Thanks. I think we got time for one more if it's a quick one.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So why are you not encouraging home storage to help settle the grid, settle it down, especially in the wintertime when we can't make as much solar because of snow and low light levels? Why not have some storage to help balance that out year round? Other countries, Australia, where they take and they're putting all their homes in, say, Adelaide, all solar, and they're actually doing money, putting money forward, government money, and then the homeowner pays a fraction of it. Yet, by another 4 years, I'm told the entire city will pretty well be run on solar.
Yeah.
So and they are getting batteries included with their systems.
Yeah.
So why are you not saying batteries is not a good idea when
No,
you can have it for, especially if the gentleman wants to do his vehicle in the wintertime off his garage,
Yeah.
he's not going to have enough to keep that thing going if those panels aren't clean.
Yeah,
Thank
home
you.
storage is great, and I think actually, sir, if you're chatting with some of the solar installers in the room today, many of them are doing what I call the triple threat. So they will have the EV chargers that they're helping folks with. They'll have the solar, and they'll have the batteries as well that they're working on. And so if you want to get the three, it's great. We actually ran a seminar about this in August that we have up on our website and YouTube channel now, where we had Energy Storage Canada coming and talking about this. I would say when it comes to large solar and wind farms these days, almost all of them are going in with batteries up front. And so they are very conscious of that at the macro scale. But you're right, at the local household scale, it hasn't taken off yet. It's still a little bit cost prohibitive. And unfortunately, there have been some rules that have come in recently. There was some kind of myth that if you are having batteries in your home or that everything's gonna explode. There was some kind of myth, and unfortunately, everybody's having to fight back against this. So there has been a bit of a slowdown in the expansion of batteries because of some of the myths around that and the myth busting. I mean, if you need to worry about anything exploding in your garage or home, it's probably going to be the gas-powered things. But for some reason, we're having to overcome electrical code barriers for batteries and all sorts of things. So there are people working very hard to overcome some of these rules, and I do think we need to enhance our system to enable more incentives for folks to have storage on site. But right now, it's still a little bit cost prohibitive.
Thanks, Heather. Sorry, we're out of time, so feel free to connect after this panel here to finish up discussing. But thank you, Shane. Thank you, Heather, for the presentations and for answering all the questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for the questions.